Coming up on Network Africa. Cameroon's government says opposition leader Issa Chiroma to face legal action over election unrest in the country. Tanzanians vote for a new president in national elections amid crackdown and opposition arrests. Plus, Nigeria prepares to establish a world-class medical city to improve healthcare service delivery. Hello and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us at this time. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin with Cameroon's post-election updates. The Interior Minister of the country, Paul Nji, has announced that opposition leader Issa Chiroma will face legal action over claims of inciting violent post-election demonstrations. This follows the declaration of 92-year-old President Paul Biya as the winner of the October 12 election by the country's Constitutional Council, marking his 8th consecutive term. Mr. Chiroma, the opposition leader, had insisted that he had won, triggering protests across the country. At least 4 protesters were killed in clashes between security forces and opposition supporters since the election. International organizations, including the United Nations, African Union, and European Union, have all called for restraint, even as the violence continues. In the meantime, protests by residents of Douala have entered a second day with debris and burnt-out vehicles littering the streets of the city following the announcement of President Paul Biya as the winner of the election. According to the Elections Cameroon office, ELCAM, President Biya secured a majority of votes, but the integrity of the count has been called into question. Witnesses in Douala and Yaoundé reported ballot box tampering, voter intimidation, and internet shutdowns during polling day. In Douala, crowds have blocked roads and clashed with security forces who responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and live ammunition. At least 3 people are said to have been killed and dozens others injured, and that's according to the Cameroonian Human Rights Committee. In his victory speech, President Paul Biya said the results reflected the maturity of Cameroonian democracy, calling on his opponents to work together to build a stable and prosperous nation. However, opposition leader Maurice Kamto rejected the outcome, calling it a sham, vowing to challenge the results through legal and political means. Staying with election matters in Côte d'Ivoire, former First Lady and the MGC presidential candidate Simone Gbagbo has questioned the legitimacy of the election results and is calling for a reform of the electoral system following what she has described as an inaccurate vote. Mrs. Gbagbo argued that the results fail to reflect the true sentiments of the people, pointing to her campaign as evidence of the Ivorian people's aspiration for change. On Monday, Côte d'Ivoire's Independent Electoral Commission announced that incumbent President Alassane Ouattara won re-election, securing a 4th term in office. According to provisional results, the 83-year-old won 89.77% of the votes, with former Commerce Minister Jean-Louis Billon receiving 3.09% and Simone Gbagbo 2.42%. The vote came amid mounting tensions over the exclusion of notable opposition candidates, reviving fears of past election-related violence, including the 2010 to 2011 crisis in which more than 3,000 people were killed. In Tanzania, despite concerns from human rights groups and the detention of opposition figures, polling stations opened this morning across the country for the national election. The country's president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, is seeking a 2nd term under the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi CCM party, which has governed since independence in 1961. Well, the election is taking place amid Mounting tension, even as opposition leader Tundu Lissu of Chadema remains imprisoned on treason charges after calling for electoral reforms, while another leading opposition candidate has been barred from running. To health matters now. Nigeria is preparing to establish a medical city, a self-sustaining ecosystem of world-class healthcare services, research and development, and associated industrial development to support the Nigerian market and continent at large. The Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Muhammad Pate, announced this during a tour of the Manila Medical City on the sidelines of the Stop TB board meeting in Manila, the capital of the Philippines. He says the establishment of the medical city is expedient as the Central Bank of Nigeria announces that medical tourism spending by Nigerians has dropped by 52% over the last 2 years.
The Coordinating Minister of Health, Professor Muhammad Pate, arrives the Manila The Coordinating Minister of Health, Professor Muhammad Pate, arrives the Manila Medical City in the Philippines and is received by the Philippines Minister of Health. The visit is on the sidelines of the Stop TB board meeting holding in the capital of the Philippines. Speaking after touring the facility, the minister announced plans by the federal government to establish a medical city, a self-sustaining ecosystem of world-class healthcare services, research and development in Nigeria.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is transforming Nigeria's health system through his Renewed Hope agenda, Health Sector Renewal Investment Initiative. I think there's a possibility that Nigeria can, in fact, have an ecosystem, a medical city that provides quaternary services for Nigerians, for countries in the West African sub-regions, and also overall in the continent. Can provide services, research, training opportunities in an ecosystem that can be sustainable. As Nigeria is moving to expand health insurance, just as we've seen here in Philippines, the PhilHealth health insurance, which is funded out of sin taxes, taxing tobacco, alcohol, sugar-sweetened beverages, and earmark those additional taxes to expand health coverage for population. That has been able to allow the government to provide care, quality care, to purchase those for the majority of its population.
Meanwhile, Dr. Herbosa is optimistic of collaborating with Nigeria to eliminate tuberculosis.
When I was in Abuja, we also saw how the public-private partnership also worked in Nigeria to combat TB. So we are high-burden countries, Nigeria and Philippines, and we are both learning from each other. He used the TrueNAT testing for remote areas. I'm going to follow that. And he's now looked at our mobile X-ray, which is one of the things he visited, and we hope that he can also use mobile to catch more TB patients. And we're very happy to have Minister Pate join us together with the First Lady of Nigeria, who is a very strong TB advocate.
Professor Pate is hoping to strengthen international collaboration to address the nation's healthcare delivery. Victoria Longjon, Channels Television News.
On October 30, 2025, leaders from the government, ECOWAS and private sector, academia and finance will gather in Abuja for a milestone event themed Made in Nigeria, Made for Health. This forum is expected to mark a new chapter in advancing Nigeria's health security, boosting local pharmaceutical manufacturing and strengthening sexual and reproductive health and rights. It's hosted by the EU delegation to Nigeria and ECOWAS, the Presidential Initiative for Unlocking the Healthcare Value Chain, PVAC, and the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, NIPRD. Well, let's discuss this further. Joining us now for more from our Abuja studios is Dr. Obi Adigwe, the Director General of the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, NIPRD. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Adigwe, for speaking to us.
Thank you very much, Layo, and we couldn't have had a more fortuitous intro than the Honorable Minister speaking about the medical city over there in Manila, where he's attended that World Conference with the First Lady. So that was a brilliant intro to this very discussion.
Indeed, and the Nigeria-EU Health Investment Forum has been described as a milestone, in advancing Nigeria's health security and industrialization. Tell us, what makes this initiative, significant at this moment?
Well, whenever you turn on the telly these days, half of the discussions around healthcare how people didn't learn any lessons from the last COVID pandemic and how there were issues around preparing for the next pandemic, because definitely there will be a next pandemic. This particular intervention is actually a very good example regarding how we in Nigeria learned our lesson and how this particular administration has prioritized building an ecosystem whilst concurrently developing a value chain to enable Nigeria not only be able to address the next pandemic or any health security challenges that may come up, but also to use the healthcare as a sector where we can not only take care of our medicine security needs, but also in a very proactive socio-economic focus, be able to serve as the hub to take care of the entire continent. So this particular discussion started towards the tail end of the last pandemic, where it was very clear that Nigeria and other African countries got the short end of the stick as regards vaccines manufacturing, because we depended on the rest of the world for about 99% of our vaccines and a significant amount of our medication. So the Ministry of Health very wisely put together a policy for local vaccines manufacturing, and NIPRD, alongside its partners in the European Union, said this must not end up as one of those brilliant policies that will end up as a nice bound document on the shelf. And with a very small grant, we were able to put together a roadmap that brought in all the stakeholders, did bottom up analysis. We had quantitative surveys, we had qualitative research, we had high-level stakeholder meetings, we had engagement with all the stakeholders, and we came up with a roadmap that was designed to ensure that within a period of 10 years, Nigeria would come up with at least 3 world-class manufacturing entities. And the EU and partners said, well, this is a good pathway for us to begin to do our work and begin to identify where we should invest, private sector, where we should focus on, the rest of the society, what kind of skills are required, what kind of training is required. And over the past 18 months, we've been putting together this particular MAF Plus project. That's the Team Europe Initiative Medicines Access and Vaccines Plus initiative, which also takes care of commodities and other interventions in the healthcare sector. And tomorrow marks the symbolic and official signing of that document. The total package, we're looking at about 18 million euros coming into Nigeria, implemented by various stakeholder groups and various implementing partners. But it's designed to change the entire architecture, academics, soft skills, support for training, support for local manufacturing, innovative research, ensuring that women and youth play a strong role in the value chain, and just making sure that by the time the next pandemic rolls by, Nigeria will be exporting vaccines to the rest of the world.
And NIPRID has, been central to research and local production efforts. How will this partnership now, with the EU help strengthen Nigeria's pharmaceutical innovation and particularly expand access to quality medicines?
That's a brilliant question, and I like how you've identified the work that NIPRID had done, and that work actually started during the COVID pandemic, where we led the world in doing the analysis for the COVID organics preparation from Madagascar. What this particular intervention is seeking to do is to ensure that by the time these capacities that have been generated in NIPRID begin to be cascaded to the rest of the research community, begin to be implemented in areas in manufacturing, areas in the industry where they are very highly required, those interventions will be sustainable. Because prior to now, in settings like ours, where there isn't significant research and development capacities, people rely on copy and paste models. That's not a sustainable approach. So what this particular administration is focusing on doing is making sure that interventions that come into our system, particularly in the healthcare sector, and you've heard the Honorable Minister mention the presidential initiative to unlock the value chain. You've heard about the presidential executive order on the pharma sector. You've heard about the ministerial committee on phytomedicines commercialization and development. And there are about 5-6 more interventions at the high end. What this intervention does is that it makes sure that as these policies are coming into play and they're being implemented across the entire value chain, all around the entire ecosystem, it is underpinned by research and development that is contextual, which is what will make it sustainable and most impactful in the long run.
All right, Dr. Adigwe, finally, what message would you like, Nigerians, especially young professionals in the health and science department to, take away from this forum that will hold tomorrow, 30th October?
So my advice isn't only for the forum tomorrow. My advice to young people, scientists, people coming into the healthcare sector, people who are in innovation, my advice goes beyond tomorrow's event. I've been in this sector since 2000, informally and officially as a government worker since 2004. And I haven't seen a setting where healthcare and pharma has been prioritized as it is now. There are a lot of opportunities coming up. Tomorrow there's going to be a lot of signings of big ticket items. There's going to be a lot of training coming up. Beyond our relationship with the EU, the Honorable Minister has also given a signal, so we're hosting Stanford and colleagues to train scientists at Transcorp Hilton on the 2nd of February next year. And there are quite a number of things. I'm sure you heard the Minister mention a few more. This is the golden era of science. So if you have the capacity, if you have the interest, if you know you have something to contribute to national service and the building of our country, this is the time to begin to engage. In fact, if you go to our website, which is www.niprd.gov.ng, on the landing page, there is a form that will enable you to begin to engage from the science aspect. Also, the minister, senior members of government are very active in the media. identify where you're going to key in. There are a lot of high-value assignments coming up. There are a lot of high-value training and capacity-building events coming up. Identify where you fit and make sure you do not lose the opportunity of getting your name written down in the sands of time in Nigeria's health and socio-economic development.
Thank you so much, Dr. Obi Adigwe. He's the Director General, National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, NIPRD. Thank you for speaking to us on Network Africa.
Great to talk to you, Layo, and looking forward to Nigerians engaging as discussed.
Thank you. Well, the United Nations is still celebrating its 80th anniversary. South Sudan has joined global commemorations with events held across the country to recognize the UN's contributions to peace and stability in the conflict-affected nation. Under the theme, Building Our Future Together, hundreds of participants gathered at the University of Juba to highlight the importance of partnerships in preventing violence, resolving grievances, and also promoting sustainable peace. The anniversary comes at a critical juncture for South Sudan as the country faces renewed political tensions and sporadic violence threatening to undermine the fragile 2018 peace deal. But despite these challenges, the UN has reaffirmed commitment to continue operating in South Sudan, pledging to stay and deliver alongside the people it serves.
In the ashes of broken promises and hope, the light blue and white came in 1945, 80 years ago. They did not come with swords nor with arrows, but with peace upon their wings and trust in shades of the sky. They gave a meaning to every life. Unmissed, standing tall like a wall between faith and fear, holding dreams that tremble in the night, holding peace like a candlelight, remains in every village, in every camp, in every heart.
Here in South Sudan, the UN has worked in partnership with the people and the government to provide humanitarian assistance, support for the peace process, protection of civilians, improving livelihoods, and building resilience. There has been progress.
For South Sudan specifically, the United Nations has been more than a partner. It has been a pillar in our nation's journey towards stability, recovery, and growth. South Sudan, as a country in transition, looks to the United Nations for continued technical, economic, and development cooperation, and we particularly urge, 1, sustained support to the peace roadmap and preparations towards credible, peaceful elections.
Well, here in Nigeria, to mark the milestone, the organization hosted a special photo exhibition showcasing its impact on humanity through the years through pictures that tell powerful stories.
This picture exhibition, organized by the United Nations, is a reflection of the organization's history and progress to commemorate its 80th anniversary. Students from several schools across the nation's capital were brought together as part of efforts to inspire the future generation on the lessons of global unity and service.
Through the coordination of the UN, we'll be able to challenge some of them, build peace, target other issues like climate change, which the UN has been at the forefront of fighting to ensure that the human race enjoys stability. So I believe that the UN has helped in so many ways to keep peace, and not just that, to also ensure development and give a voice to people who ordinarily may not have the voice as well.
Intellectual property
They share their thoughts on the impact of the United Nations on education, food security, peacekeeping, and sexual and reproductive health.
It's a very exciting thing that we've been doing this for 80 years. The United Nations first came as a way to protect peace and humanity for the world, and the fact that they've been able to do it for so long and expand so much is a very beautiful and impressive thing, and it really just gives hope for humanity that would have been lost otherwise.
I feel like what the United Nations was 80 years ago, the beginning part of the United Nations, is not what it is today. Like, it's evolved so much, it's helped so many people. As I'm going around this exhibition, I'm seeing so many different pictures of snippets of people's lives and how they have been positively affected by the United Nations, and I have to commend that effort. Because education is very expensive and it's not very available to people that, let's say, of lower class, I believe the United Nations has kind of made it more accessible, made sure that all children deserve a right to learn.
Not only does it help international peace, which also helps protect the rights of people, but also protects the rights of children and young adults, so that way they can have easier access to education and information to better their lives.
80 years on, the United Nations continues its mission of peace and progress. And through this exhibition, it's inspiring young minds to carry out that mission into the future. From Abuja, Victoria Longjohn, Channels Television News.
And as we end the program today, here's a fun fact about the continent. Did you know that Liberia is Africa's oldest republic, gaining independence on July 26, 1847? It became the continent's first independent black republic, standing out during the era of European colonization. It was founded in the early 19th century by freed African American and Caribbean slaves who sought a new life in West Africa during the scramble for Africa. The capital, Monrovia, is named after former U.S. President James Monroe. Liberia's flag and constitution were also modeled after those of the United States, reflecting its unique historical ties across the Atlantic. And that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.